Welcome, everybody. My name is Sari van Poelje. I'm the director of Intact Academy and the director of Agile Business Innovation. I've been giving coach training for about 27 years now, and I've been a coach and a team coach for 35 years. I started really young. I don't really recommend that. You get better as a coach as you mature with age. So Beata has to smile. I know many of you are very experienced coaches, and I welcome, and some of you are starting. So how many of you already do team coaching? Can you raise your hands? I mean, virtually raise your hands, actually. Yep, fantastic. How many of you are just starting in this beautiful profession? Some of you, great. All of you, welcome. It's a wonderful, wonderful profession, and I still get out of bed every morning going, yay, I get to do this. And it's such a privilege to be able to make clients aware and to help them on their journey. So today we're going to talk about team coaching. It's one of my bigger passions at the moment. I've actually switched from doing a lot of executive coaching to doing a lot of team coaching. And the reason for that is that I think that the world needs more teams to solve the bigger problems we have today. With executive coaching, I can really improve someone's quality of work and life. And at the same time, I want to have a systemic effect. So team coaching is a better tool for that. And so that's why my passion at the moment is very much in the team coaching world. I want to take you through a couple of things, and I am recording this session. The recording will be available to you on my website. I will also send out the presentation, so you don't have to be really quick in taking notes. But if you're kinesthetic, of course, it's better to take notes. But you'll get the presentation anyway. Rules, not so many. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat. It doesn't mean I will answer the question immediately, but I might answer it afterwards. So it's always worth it to do that. Unmute at certain moments. I will say this is an interactive moment. I will hold up a virtual sign. That means that you are free to react, and I'd love to hear your voices. So that's, and for the rest, you know, respect and the general, you know, things we do online. We're so practiced at it now. So, okay. So team coaching, for me, I'm going to share a presentation, and now and then I'm going to ask you questions. So team coaching for me is really something very different from individual coaching. And I will share because you have so many different levels you work in. And what we will do today is we will really look at what is team coaching, what's the difference between group, team, and tribe, what levels can we work at, and what's our job at these different levels. Now and then we'll ask questions of each other, and if we have time, I'll put you in small groups as well. Okay, so far? Yes? Okay, good. Everyone can hear me? Everyone can see me? Great.
Yes.
It's an interactive moment. I'm just testing you now. Thank you for the answer. Okay, so what is team coaching to me? Well, there's lots and lots of definitions out there, and there's lots and lots of books out there as well. Some of them are really good and some of them are not so good. But for me, team coaching, in any case, it's focused on creating sustainable results and ongoing development and learning. So we don't only help the team to problem solve, we also help them to do that without us afterwards. For me, that's really important. I'm a guest in a team, usually for about 10 sessions, something like that. And I hope to create sustainable results that will enable them to continue without me. I believe that for team coaching, you really need to be a surgeon in some way. So surgeons like to do, you know, quick incisions so that you have a quick healing time as well. And that's the way I think about it. For me, what's really special about team coaching is that the whole team is your client. So it's not the individuals in the team. If you coach the individuals in the team, for me, that's more group coaching. And that's valid as well. Sometimes I run group coaching sessions where people come on a voluntary basis and we coach individually and then see what happens with the other people in the group. But team coaching for me is really the leader and the team. As a single entity, my client is the team. My client is not the leader. My client is the team. I contract through the leader, but still my client is the team. So I never do team coaching without the leader there. That's really important to hold on to. And also, in the end, what you work with the team, and they have to create development. They have to create a good structure, inspiring leadership, and a cooperative culture together. Also, for me, team coaching is something that's really, I've seen a hand, so I'll go back to you. Coaching is something that requires some complexity in your perspective, because we're working both with the intrapsychic, so what's inside of people. You have to understand what's going on with the people because it shows up in the team dynamics. You have to understand relationships because the way people interact can make or break cooperation in a team. You have to understand structure of teams and psychodynamics in teams. We'll talk about that in a while. But you also have to understand that the team is part of a team of teams in an organization. So that means you have to understand something about how the systemic works as well. All in all, I think team coaching is something that requires this multi-perspective view of what you can do and what you should do. So I think it requires quite a lot of training and a lot of experience and a lot of listening to yourself and to maybe the audio tapes of yourself working with the team to understand how that works. Okay, so someone has a question?
No, I just have a request. Can someone please mute off because I hear some sound is distracting me. I would love to listen to you with my undivided attention, and someone has got their mic on.
Okay. So the request is, could you all please mute while I talk and then unmute when there's an interactive moment? Is that okay with y'all?
I think it's the person who's Milika. I think it's, yeah.
It's okay, Piotr. They've got the message.
Yeah.
Susan, you had a question.
Yeah, well, just responding when you asked us to raise the hand. I forgot to put it down. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, so far in terms of definition of team coaching and what we look at in team coaching, yes, no, yep. Okay, good. So for me, really, I think I get a lot of requests for team coaching from my clients, and I always have to think, what are they really asking for? Somehow everyone in an organization wants to be a team. And I sometimes wonder, is a team so much better than a group? A team is much more complicated to run than a group. And when people tell me, we really want to do some team coaching here, the first thing I ask myself is, are they a group that wants to become a team? Are they a team that wants to become better? Should they become a team at all? Because maybe they need a group. So in time, I've developed a kind of thinking about that I'd like to share with you, which helps me to think about, is this a group, a team, and what is necessary here? So we've talked about, what is team coaching? And as I said, sometimes people ask you for group coaching, not for team coaching. So it's important to know this. For me, a group is really, it has boundaries, so you know who's in and who's out. And they have shared goals. For instance, sometimes I run groups, training groups. People come, they really want to know something about team coaching. Like you're a group, you're not a team. You may have a shared goal in terms of wanting to learn something specific. There is a boundary because you're in this Zoom meeting and the people who aren't there are not part of this group. But really, basically in a group, the main relationship is between the member and the leader, and that's fine. Sometimes when you have huge volumes of work to do, working in a group is great, as long as the structure is respected and as long as you all have the same shared goal. Sometimes when I work with call centers, and I do that quite a lot, client calls, they call a call center person, they ask their supervisor, and in that line, it's fine. They don't need to have contact with the other people in the group, to do their work. So group is fine if you do repetitive work in a stable market. When you want to move towards more innovation work, you really need to create interdependence between the members, because innovation exists in the meeting of disciplines, in the meeting of people. And really, when you move more towards innovative work and revolution, I call it, you not only need to be in the same boundary, you also need to have a shared purpose. And what's even further, you need to have an acceptance of interdependence. In a group, that's not so necessary. You just have your targets, you work in relationship with the leader. In a team, you have to accept that if I win, you win. If I lose, you lose. Sometimes I set up teams quite consciously. For instance, I had a team of people who wanted to get a new job. Part of the way to create interdependence, for instance, was to tell them, you can't leave this team unless everybody has a new job. And so the people who had the new job first got really bored with having to stay in the team, and they made sure the other people got a job as well. That's kind of an artificial way of creating interdependence. Being in a team, in an organization, is a really big ask. Usually people avoid being interdependent. In Western society, this thing about becoming independent is something that's, hi Bianca, I've seen you, is something that's really high up in priorities. So to ask people to really be interdependent and to think, hey, Piotr is here, if he doesn't finish his work, then I lose as well. I'm going to stay until he finishes his work as well. That's a demand for interdependence. It's a big ask. I also think running teams in organizations is much more complex for leaders, because you not only have to invest in the task and the managing the complexity of the environment, you also have to really invest in this managing of interdependence. All for one, one for all. And that requires quite a bit of energy from the leader as well. So for me, when I get asked as a team coach, one of the first questions I ask is this a group? Is it a group wanting to become a team? Is it a team that wants to become better? Because depending on that answer, my work as a team coach is very different. Okay, so enough of me, let's go back to you. So any questions about this idea of the difference between groups, teams, at the moment? Bianca, I see your hand. This is an interactive moment, folks. This is my virtual little sign.
And in that case, hi, Sari. First of all, let me say hello to you. And
Hi,
I
Bianca.
don't have a question to the part that you have just discussed with us. Just a simple question to Milica Ogljevic. I can't pronounce the name correctly. Please mute yourself. I was really distracted by the noise. And you as a host should be able to mute everyone.
Yes, I should be. Just a second. Mute all. How's that? Yay. Okay, good. Any other questions around this? Is it clear, this difference between group and team? This is yes, no, yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're requested to work as a group, what you're doing is you're working with the individuals in the group and their relationship to you. If you're working in a team, you're working with the team as an entity. So how can you together get better? What can you do together that you can't do alone? That's the real question in a team. Okay, does that make sense to y'all? Yeah, I see some nodding. I'll take that as a yes. Okay, good. Hi, Benedetta. Thanks for the little thumbs up. Tanya.
I have a question about the interdependency.
Yes.
A little bit more about this, because I think it is in a connection, in a deep connection with the contribution, because there should not be overlapping in the contribution between the members of the team, and this is the hallmark of team cooperation. And
I like the connection, Tanya. Yeah. For me, interdependence means that you really accept that you can only win and lose together. So really the central question is, what can we do together that we can't do alone? If you can't answer that question, you have to ask yourself, are we really a team or not? The other thing for me in the interdependence is that you really share information, but also effort. You're focused on the same purpose, which is different than being focused on the same goal. So being focused on the same purpose is we share the why of the team. And we can talk about that in a little second. But I like the connections you're making. And I'm sure everybody has their own framework about what dependence, interdependence, independence means. I think in groups, people have the illusion of independence a lot. In teams, unfortunately, a lot of people also have the illusion of independence. And that makes, of course, our work very grateful to help people create that real sense of cooperation. Okay, so far, y'all. We'll go on to the different levels of team coaching. And I'm aware of time as well, so maybe that's also pushing me. One of the things that I would ask of you at this point actually is to think about one of the groups or teams you're working for or in, and to think about, is this actually a group or a team? And how would I know that? How would you know that? But just take a minute to think about, is this a group or a team? And what criteria do I have for that? How do I know? It's good to keep that same team or group in mind in any case, as we go through this. So we've talked about what team coaching is. We've talked about multi-perspectives. We've talked about differences between groups and teams. Sometimes I say groups, teams, and tribes, but we rarely work in tribes because they rarely ask for help. So, but there's a whole theory around that I'd be willing to share with you another time, but not this time. Maybe tribal work is becoming more important because we do actually, under the pressure of everything we're going through in the world, we do see more tribal kind of behavior. So it's an interesting area, but we can talk about that another time. When we do team coaching, really what we look at is different levels. So as a team coach, I am very conscious of the fact that there are always 3 levels working at the same time. So there is a team structure. So I can see like the organogram, the hierarchy, the roles in a team. And we call this, and the boundaries, who's in, who's out, who's in the leadership, who's in the membership. All of this, by the way, comes from transactional analysis as well. It's based on that, for those of you in the know. Part of my focus is this structure. And I'm very aware that if the structure isn't set right, probably you'll see a lot of dynamics and psychodynamics in the team. So being aware of there's a structure there that also determines behavior, limits and encourages behavior is an important thing to know when you're thinking diagnostics interventions in team coaching. I'm going to talk a little bit more about boundaries in a second. That's why it's in red. The boundaries, who's in, who's out, the hierarchy and the role clarity determine who has the formal power in a team. And when you're a team coach, and I can have a long discussion with my colleagues about this, I think part of your job is also, as long as it's there, to support the leader that is. So that's also the formal power. It says here also processes. What I mean by that in the structure is very much a focus on, first of all, the decision-making processes, because that's often where there's a problem in the teams. It's also diagnostically really interesting if people complain about the fact that the team doesn't take decisions quickly enough. There's also something really important to look at as a team coach. The second level that's always at work during team coaching is the relational level. The relational level is a bit less visible sometimes, but we can see it in the dynamics of the team. And I'll talk a bit more about dynamics in a second. We can also see it in the social ranking or the informal leadership in a team. Very important to watch out for. Social ranking is what animals do. Social ranking is who's more important, who's more influential is actually the translation. We also look at that level at personas, and by personas we mean how much of yourself can you show in your role in the team. These 3 things together really determine the influence. So anyone who has influence can, you can see that in the relational structure of a team. The third level we look at within team coaching is really the psychodynamic level. It's invisible. So at this psychodynamic level, it's the unconscious process in the group. And then you think, oh, how am I going to study or influence this unconscious process? The things we look at this level as a team coach are what we call imago. So what is the team in people's mind? Because the team in people's mind actually determines their behavior more probably than the team in actual fact. Often people carry a little rucksack with them of all the experiences of teams they've had before, and that is part of what we call the imago. What also influences us at this third level of team coaches is transference. So those of you who have probably a psychology or a therapeutic background know what I mean by transference, but very simply, what are you sticking on to the other people in the team from your past? If I make a really simple kind of definition of that. So I can be in this, let's say we're a team, I can see Tanya and Piotr and Bianca in front of me, and I think, oh, Piotr, you look just like my Uncle Sam. So I'm going to treat you as if you're my Uncle Sam, regardless of who you are. That's kind of transference in the simplest form. I do apologize for those of you who have a more educated version of this. So what also influences it at the psychodynamic level is personality. So, and more specifically, what story do you bring into a team? Sometimes people bring, I was just coaching a leader in a team, and I said to him, so what is your wish for your team in this team coaching? And he said, I want us to be like a family. And then I asked him, so tell me what kind of, this is, sorry, I'm smiling, but what kind of family do you want this team to be? Because obviously there's many different types of family. And he said, I want it to be the family I never had. It's interesting, psychodynamically. What someone brings in terms of personality and wish, but it really influences how people behave in the team. So this third level, we call that the psychodynamic level. And all of these things together determine how much personal authority you can have in a team. And it's a really interesting diagnostic area. So I guess what I'm saying to you is when you do team coaching, you're always working at 3 levels at the same time, but there's an order in the levels you work in. So my personal pet theory and practice is we always start with the structural level, then the relational level, and whatever is left is a psychodynamic problem. And I say this with real purpose, because structural level change usually takes 0 to 6 months. Relational change takes longer, will take you at least like 6 to 12 months to really have sustainable change at that level. Psychodynamic change takes longer than that. We're talking about the narrative, in TA terms, the script level of a team. Okay. So, interactive moment. So we've talked about what a team is. We've talked about what team coaching is. Now we're talking about where do you actually look and intervene as a team coach? And my stance is really, you're always working at structure, relationship, and psychodynamics. In a certain order. So I'm wondering, there must be many of you with different frames of reference, but I'm wondering what kind of questions or you have around this. Any questions, anyone? Yay, Avalon.
Oh, yes, thank you. You said that you work with those 3 levels at the same time, but then you say you start with structure and then relationship and then dynamics. So how do you actually, how does that all work together?
That's a great question that I probably can't answer in 1.5 hours. Let's see, can we break your question down? Say it again.
If you're working with them all at the same time, then how do you work it so that you're starting with structure, then with relationship, and then the psychodynamics? Yeah.
I'm going to talk about that after this, so I'll take it 1 level at a time.
Sure.
My sense is a lot of team coaches come in and they love working at the relational level, kind of stirring that pot of dynamics and relationship. Many of us are trained in that. I really think that a lot of relational issues or conflicts or games, we would say in TA, within teams come actually from unclear boundaries, unclear roles, unclear processes. And so over time, I've learned to do that first. And lo and behold, if you have a clear structure out there with clear roles of leadership and membership, the amount of dynamics just reduced dramatically. What I teach people is really to do it one at a time. So start with the structure, see if that's clear enough, then work with the relationship, then work with the psychodynamics, because also for many reasons, because it takes longer, but also because you want to create immediate results. So people like success and then they're motivated to do more team coaching, but also you need a relationship of trust to be able to work at the psychodynamic level. And so that takes a bit of time. It's easier to start with the structural level, which is visible to everyone. I'll give you an example. And this is not so uncommon, unfortunately. I was working with a startup. I do a lot of work with startups. I'm an accredited startup coach for the European Union. So they send me around, which is great. It's wonderful work. I get to work with the weirdest teams, from fish traps to drone thermal photography companies, anything and everything. But I was working with one of those startups, and they really wanted team coaching because, as a lot of startups, you know, this period between 5 and 50 is a really difficult one for most startups to scale. And I was talking to the CEO, and he was really enthusiastic about team coaching. And I said, so one of the first decisions we have to take is who is going to be in the team coaching. This is a really important moment. This is a key intervention to help a leader think about who is actually part of my team or not. This is working with boundaries. And so this guy says to me, well, you know, head of sales, head of products, head of technology, and my secretary. And so I'm going, okay, so, you know, these managers, I understand, but explain to me, you know, why is your secretary? This is about clarity of boundaries and structure, Avalon, yeah? And he says, well, when I'm gone, my secretary replaces me. And I said, so what do you mean replaces you? And he says, well, replaces me as, you know, she's then takes over my tasks. As CEO, yes, as CEO. I said, oh, okay, so this is interesting. So how do you, if you would draw the organogram, how would you draw it, the formal structure of the team? And he wasn't able to do it. So, which is, Margot is smiling, but it does happen a lot. When you ask people to draw a formal structure, who's in and out of your team, it's extremely important because boundaries create safety, create identity, you know, it enables you to work. If you're unclear about the boundaries, all this energy just goes everywhere. So first stop with this guy was, let's talk about who your direct reports are and how did you mix this informal structure? In the end, you know, he says, and many of team leaders at this level, he said, I'm lonely. And my secretary has been with me since the beginning. You can understand this. Kristen is also going like this, understands, you know. We have a saying in Holland, if you're lonely at the top, you're doing something wrong. But that's more the relational level. The structural level for, you know, in this team was really this decision, who is in the team coaching is already a structural intervention. And helping him get clear about who's in, who's out, actually diminished the dynamics in the team because people were envious of this secretary because she had a position that wasn't really hers. You understand how this works? Yeah, people are nodding, so I guess you're understanding. And once that had become clear, this whole imago about, you know, who do you trust? Who are you loyal to? The narrative of the team changed as well. Okay, so I don't have a complete answer for you, Avalon, but I hope this gives you some sense of how these levels are linked and why it's so important to start with the structural.
Yes, thank you. It does. And you mentioned TA, and this is based on TA. Well, I've done quite a bit of TA, so
Cool.
I'd be interested to you know, to know where you bring that in and you know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go to my website. You'll find, or email me afterwards. We can talk.
Oh,
That's
brilliant.
fine. Yeah. Okay. So the rest of you are still on a roll. Yep.
Can we ask more questions?
Olivier is going like this, so that I guess that means good. Yeah, good. Okay. So I'll give you, I know, Piotr, but
okay,
I'm gonna stop you here. So just a little question. I had a question before, if you were working in a group or a team. If you now see these levels, where do you think your group or team is stuck? You know, where is the key issue at the structural level, at the relational level, at the psychodynamic level? What's your gut feeling about that? Just take a minute to jot it down if you want to. Just gut feeling. Gut feelings are important as a coach. I always think a lot of our work is science, but it's also art. So the science is in knowing your theory and your concepts, but the art is in educating your intuition. So a lot of it is that. Okay, I'm gonna move on. And what I want to move on to is to just give you a little taste of these levels. So I'm going to take one concept from each level and kind of give you a taster of that and ask you some questions afterwards, and then we'll talk about it. So first level was the structural level, and there were 4 main concepts there: boundaries, roles, processes, and power. I had to think there for a minute. Yeah. So boundaries in a team, we draw teams with boundaries. So we say each team has a major external boundary, which is the difference between outside and inside. That can be something that's tangible, like a wall, or membership of a group you've paid for, or it can be intangible as well. You know, sometimes you come to we used to, before COVID, go to big parties, and then people are standing together in little groups, and you can almost feel that boundary around them. That's also, the intangible boundary. A team has an external boundary, outside, inside, and it has an internal boundary, which differentiates the leadership from the membership. At the structural level, we're talking formal leadership, formal membership. We also have, but that complicates stuff, minor boundaries between departments or between classes of membership. It's not so important for our purposes now. The boundaries is almost the first thing. After I ask, is it a group or a team? The second question I usually ask is, where are the boundaries? Who's in, who's out? Who's in the leadership? Who's in the membership? These boundaries are important. I often think, we're kind of boundary hunters as team coaches. Because where the boundaries are, so the clarity of who's in, who's out is really important. But what's also important is how open or closed are these boundaries. And I'll say something about that. So the permeability of boundaries is really important as well. if you want to create an innovative team, this is the thing, you have to open towards the outside world, else you never get enough stimulus to become innovative. So there, I should explain it differently. Hold on a second. So scratch that. So what you need to look at is permeability of the boundaries. How open or closed are they? And often people say to me, I want them open and closed at the same time. That's just not possible. And I'll explain. So team leaders come to me and they say, I want to be reactive to the outside world. And at the same time, I want to create a clear identity for my team. To be reactive to the outside world, you need to open your boundary. That makes sense, huh? But to create identity, you need to close it. You can't be completely open, completely closed at the same time. There's a sequence in that. So what a team has to learn is to open when it needs to innovate, to close when it needs to execute. It's like breathing. Boundaries are not set structures. This is the thing. Leaders always ask me, what's the best structure? Well, it depends on what your purpose is. So if you want to innovate, you have to open. If you want to execute, you have to close, because you have to create that identity and that stability as well. Does that make sense to you? Yep. For the leadership boundary, the same is true. Leaders tell me, I want to delegate maximum, but I want to stay in control. So if you want to delegate, you have to open. If you want to stay in control, you have to close. You can't do both at the same time. So you have to help the leader understand that sometimes they have to open, sometimes they have to close. And it's like breathing. The structure, where the boundary is important, but also how open or closed are they, and does it serve the purpose of the team? Okay. The third question around boundaries I often focus on as a team coach is, how can we make this structure as simple as possible? I often come into teams where they've really overcomplicated structures. They've built a little level around each person. Certainly startups grow organically, so they create structure as they go along. And then when I come in as a team coach, the third after, where are the boundaries and are they permeable enough? The third question I ask is, is this too complex for what you're trying to do? And often it is. So at the structural level, if we only take this boundary issue into account, your job as a team coach is to look at, are the boundaries in the right place? Is the complexity and permeability in line with the purpose of the team? So the more innovative, the more open you have to be, the less complex you have to be. If you have to move huge volumes as a team in a stable market, you can close your boundaries, you can create more complexity. You probably need to create more complexity. And the third job as a team coach at the structural level is to think about, are the roles and the processes clear? If these things are in place, I guarantee you that the dynamics in the team will lessen. But also people will feel safe, they will feel clear, they will know what to do and when to do it. So this is the starting point for me in the team coaching. First, focus structural level. Okay. Okay, we're back. Rosella is smiling, taking notes and smiling. Okay, clear enough about structural level. Sabina is going, yes, that's really encouraging, Sabina. Thank you very much. I feel better already. So, do you understand what I mean by the structural level? That's the first question, I guess. That's a yes or a no. It's interactive moment. Yes, no, yes. Okay. And is it clear that that's also part of your job as a team coach, to look at that structural level? Yeah. Beata is going like that, so I'm guessing that's a yes. Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes. And then are there any questions? Carol?
So do you do like a questionnaire beforehand, like before you go into the team coaching? Do you assess the situation before?
Yes. Yes. So the normal kind of rhythm of the team coachings I do is, well, first you get into contact with the team. Then you have what I call a soft contract, like an intention. They're interested. There's a general sense something needs to be done. That I do with the team leader. Then I have intakes with the members of the team. The intakes are not about how are you feeling in the team, but more about what do you think of the team? What's working well in the team? What's not working well in the team? Then I do a debrief with the leader. I never want to surprise a leader. It's their team. So please don't surprise your leaders. They like to know what's going on. I prepare the first session with them. And then it kind of follows, Carol. It's always leadership briefing, debriefing, team coaching, leadership briefing, debriefing, team coaching, leadership briefing, debriefing, team coaching, etc., etc. I usually do about six sessions of team coaching and about 6 to 7 sessions of leadership coaching, alternating. Yeah. Do I use intake forms, so I check these levels in my intakes. But sometimes I use personality profiles simply because people, it's an easy in. So if you do whatever questionnaire or profile, people really like to talk about that. They like to talk about themselves. So it's an easy way into the intake conversation. Is that an answer to your question, Carol? Yep. Cool. Any other questions? This is an interactive moment, so feel free.
I have a quick
Talk
question
about the structural level. Ife?
Yep.
Can you turn on your camera so I know you're there?
Oh, I'm sorry, because I am in my camera's bandwidth issues, so it's not going to.
Okay.
It's either I can't hear you or if I have my camera on.
Okay, but you're not an avatar. That's already good news.
Yeah. So, quick question. So, I was taking some notes. You said leaders open when they need to delegate, and then when do they close?
When they want more control.
When they want more control.
And
okay.
It's not, see, the thing is, what I teach leaders is that it shouldn't be a characteristic, so a personality issue if you want to be in control or if you want to delegate. It should be a decision based on what you want to achieve in the team. That's a lot, that takes a lot of teaching of leaders. So you need to centralize when you're focused on execution and volume a lot. You need to decentralize, so open, when you need to create participation and more exchange for innovation. So opening or closing the leadership boundary should be focused on achieving the purpose of the team. It shouldn't be a personal decision of the leader. This kind of brings me to another hobby horse of mine. I really have a problem with the fact that sometimes people say, all the leaders in the team have to become coaching leaders. And I'm going, well, no, actually not. It depends on what phase the team is in and what you want to achieve. If you want to create more participation, you need to create a coaching leadership style. If you want to focus on disciplined execution, you need to be able, as a team leader, to really direct the team. So thanks for giving me an in for my personal hobby horse here. Yeah. Any other questions or did I answer your question, Ife?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions at the moment? There's a lot of you in here.
I was just wondering about.
Who am I speaking to?
Oh, Piotr is speaking.
Hi, Piotr. Hi.
Yeah, I was wondering, actually, I'm working with one team and I'm wondering whether it seems to me that they are from becoming a team, actually. From what you've presented, that from becoming, they're moving towards becoming a team. And I wonder whether I work at the relational or psychodynamic level, where they're doing like art together and then they're reflecting on their own process. So they are starting to have that awareness of that communication. So they're getting a group exercise and they're starting to get awareness of their relationship dynamics based on how they approach a group task. Let's say they have to make a painting together.
This is educational, right, Piotr?
Yeah, well, they're a group of educators, but actually it's about their relationship and enhancing their relationships. So to decrease games and agitation and have sort of more awareness and more functional fluency, let's say. And I wonder if this is relational, or how does one know that you're working at the level of imago and the psychodynamic?
Gosh, that's really complicated. What's the simplest way you can ask me this?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
You're excited, but what's the simple way?
How do you differentiate the relational from the psychodynamic in that model? Yeah, because for me the imago is unconscious. It's that stuff that's implicit in transferences, and relational is like the observable. And yeah, and I would like to reach that.
Okay, let's say. Let's say someone in your group has a history in teams where I'm trying to think of an example, so forgive me, I'm looking up because I'm thinking of an example. So let's say someone in your team has a kind of a rucksack of history of teams where they've always had to fight for their place. It comes from their family history. They bring it into every team they are in. Their last team was also a very competitive place, and now they're in your team, right? Okay. So at the psychodynamic level, they bring this narrative of perhaps teams are unsafe. I always have to fight for my place, right? At the relational level, what you'd probably see is a dynamic around competition. So you'd probably see a lot of intrigue and agitation. Does that make sense? At the structural level, what I'm assuming is that this person maybe has never experienced a team in which the leader was a leader and stayed in their role, and the members were members and they stayed in their role. So, you know, as there's always a relationship between these levels, but as a team coach, we start with the structural, make it safe by clarifying roles, then work with the relational, the dynamics. You know, how can we increase cohesion so that we decrease competition? How can we teach this person how to cooperate, because they've probably not had an experience like that? And then whatever is left is a transferential issue, right? And you'd have to help them change their narrative around groups and teams. Storytelling.
Yeah, I hear it. So it's kind of the almost the implicit of the, you need to sort out the first two levels to be able to reach the third one.
Yeah, in my world, yes, but there might be a lot of people who think differently around it, but this is what works and what I teach people, because it's been working pretty well for me. Yeah, but there's many different, you know, there's many different ways of doing it. I'm just telling you my truth. It doesn't mean it's the truth, Piotr. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so question. Yeah. Oh, there's some hands. Olivier, speak and be heard.
Yes. So, how do you help basically team member to raise the sort of consciousness of responsibility, or if you are a bit in a position of leadership, so how do you raise the co-responsibility, so to speak, of, you know, to get the job done or to have the right quality, or this aspect? How do you sort of promote this kind of team responsibility?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. Yeah, I think leadership is a position, but it's also a relationship path. So leaders, one of the main complaints people come to me with, that's Dutch, sorry, it's a Dutchism, is that their members are not proactive enough, or that they have passive, that they're missing the leadership in the team, right? That's what you're talking about, yeah. So part of that is educating the leader that whatever style they have will have an effect on the members. So the passiveness of members is usually the result of the directiveness of the leader. Can I, yeah, does that make sense? Yeah. So part of, you know, leaders always tell me, you have to work with the members because they're so passive. And I'm going, well, actually, it's the result of your leadership style. So I'm going to start with you and then we'll see what happens to the members. So partly it's that. And partly it's really teaching members you know, what's negotiable and what's non-negotiable in terms of taking initiative in a team. This has to do with persona. We call that persona, Olivier. After the roles have been clarified, usually it's a great relief to people if leaders really take their position and members really take their position. And then you can start working on, okay, so how do you cooperate from these different levels? Yeah, that's the second step. So that's what I would answer you at the moment in the short space of time I've got. Yeah. I'm aware it's 16:30 and we still have half an hour and 2 levels. But Alexis, you've been holding up your hand for a while now. Is it a short question I can answer?
Yes. Hi, thank you. I was curious, so on the structural levels, do you then also look at the goals of the company, and in the psychodynamic, also the transactions between the people? Can you divide it like that, or?
In the structure, okay, so the goals of the company. Yeah, so I think, the team coaching I do is really focused on a business metric. Sometimes I have team coaches who say to me, they have to cooperate more. And my answer is why? Because you have to think that any team within a system has to achieve probably a systemic goal. That makes sense, right? So my team coaching is, when I contract for it, it's always linked to whatever business metric has to be realized. So yes, we will cooperate more because we need to increase innovation by 20%. That's a metric. When I worked for KLM, we had a metric. I remember working on a project in KLM where I coached the teams to reach a metric which was around decreasing turnaround time. So those of you who work in airlines, airlines lose the most money when they're on the ground. That's kind of logical. So the quickest way for airlines to make money is to get that turnaround time. So landing up, flying again, decrease that time. So the metric for every team coaching I did in that time at KLM is, what is your contribution to decreasing turnaround time? If it was the receptionist, to the pilot, to the cargo people, and every team coaching I do, that was KLM, is always linked to a business metric, because else it becomes a nice to have instead of a must have. Does that make sense? It makes sense to some people, but not all people. Yeah, I'm really a business team coach. Yeah. Okay. I'm sure there's loads of questions and I'd love to talk to you longer, and still I'm gonna go to the other 2 levels, just so that we have a completed cycle, else I feel so incomplete with you. I wouldn't want that for you or for me. So we have a second level, which we call the relational level, that you also work on as a team coach. And we said there are 4 main things you look at the relational level. 1, you look at the dynamics, you look at the social ranking or the informal structure, you look at the personas, how are people able to fulfill their roles, and you look at who has influence here. Okay, we're just talking about the first one, dynamics. So after you've done your business with clarifying structure and roles and processes, your next job, whatever's left of the problem, is probably a relational problem. And one of the first things I look at that level is dynamics. So within my world, we talk about 3 types of dysfunctional dynamics and 1 type of functional dynamics. So we have 3 red dynamics, if you want, and 1 green dynamic. The red dynamics are pressure. Pressure comes from the outside. So it could be COVID is pressure, put a lot of pressure on teams, financial crisis, pressure, competition from other teams is pressure. Yeah. We talk about agitation. Agitation is the dynamic from the members to the leaders. So members pushing those leaders, not accepting them, or wanting to replace them, or leaders not taking their place. That we call agitation. It's a technical term. And we talk about intrigue, which is the dynamic between members. Like, Alexis, if I would start to gossip about you, that would be intrigue, right? And we have classic intrigues, like between production and sales. There's always a lot of intrigue, right? Those are what we call what I call the red dynamics. They will displace and discombobulate a team. Now, that's not such a bad thing to be discombobulated or really put under this dynamic, as long as you have enough cohesion. We call that the green dynamic. Cohesion is the will of the team to survive together. So, you know, I can say because of COVID, I haven't seen my teammates for quite a while, but we have such a strong sense of wanting to survive together. Our cohesion is so strong that even that amount of pressure won't keep us down. Does that make sense? Yeah. When we work as a team coach with dynamics, you have to realize that crisis or dynamics are unavoidable, and you need crisis. You also need crisis to innovate. If you had a completely stable team, you'd never innovate. But you have to have enough cohesion in the team to keep it together, to keep on cooperating, to keep on having that sense of we will go through this together. If there is not that sense in a team, then an increase of pressure, agitation, and intrigue will break up the team. It will implode or explode. Does that make sense? Yeah. So at this level, the job of the team coach, it's a bit, I can't tell you enough about this, but a really interesting job is you have to, well, this makes more sense. There's 2 ways to go about it. One is to decrease the dynamics. So try to find a way to decrease the agitation, the pressure, the intrigue. Often the root of that is in unclear structure. So then you go back to the structural level. Or you can deal with it as a team coach by helping the team increase the cohesion or their power to cooperate, this real sense of being in it together. there's a lot of strategies to do that. This is a bit too short to go into that, but there's good ways and bad ways to increase cohesion, I think, for me. I mean, a very short-term way to increase cohesion is to have an external enemy. A lot of countries use that as a way to increase cohesion in their own country by saying everybody else is the enemy. Well, yeah, that's the short-term way of increasing cohesion. Long-term way of increasing cohesion is by really creating a sense of pride and cooperation and purpose within the team. And I think that's part of our job as a team coach. Y'all are getting lots of information now. You're welcome to my world, huh? So at the relational level, the moral of the story is we either work, our job is to decrease the red dynamics and to increase the green dynamic so that the team really sticks together and creates good cooperative relationships. Okay, any questions about that? Martina, what's your thinking? Poldvere.
I totally agree you.
That's very short. It's good to see you. Anything else? Any questions, comments about this? Carol. It's a wonder I can see your physical hand up because in so many people. Yeah, go for it.
At what stage do you use one-to-one coaching when you see that maybe there's one member who's really resisting and not cooperating? And when do you decide?
I don't.
Never.
Because my client is the team. So anything that happens at the individual level has to be discussed in the team. So it might be sometimes that someone is so disruptive that they actually ask for a separate thing. And I always tell them, whatever you tell me separately will come back into the team coaching. Because if you start doing one-on-ones, you disrupt the sense of the team as an entity, and they start to have special relationships with you. So in some ways, you're repeating the psychodynamics of whatever's in that team. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the answer is I don't do it. I've had, there was one exception in 35 years, but it's so extreme that I really would not recommend, don't do this at home kind of situation. I had a team, I was working with a team on their structure, and it was a German company where they had two-headed leadership. Well, it's quite common. So there were two main leaders, and then there was a leadership team. And I was explaining to them that the structure, the hierarchy of a team changes depending on how much pressure there is from the outside. This is a bit technical, but if there's a crisis, you usually see that the financial leader becomes more important than the customer service, in a manner of speaking. Huh? So there's kind of the informal hierarchy changes depending on what the environment is doing. I was explaining this to them, and they were in crisis, and I said, so at this point that you're in crisis, could you get into one line showing me what your hierarchy is? And one leader was the CEO and the other leader was the CFO. That was the two-headed leadership. And one of these two leaders said, I'm not going to do this exercise. And he, because he didn't want to show that at that moment in time, there was a difference in who took the decisions. It was very difficult for him to comprehend that there was a different focus at that time in the team. And I said, it's fine, you know, any exercise you can say yes or no to. But afterwards, with this guy, I did have a separate conversation, and that was the one exception, Carol. What I understood afterwards is that he was actually, he already had a new job. So he escalated the agitation really to the extreme. So he had a valid excuse to leave. That made sense in his world, at least. It doesn't have to make sense to you. So that was the one exception that I did have afterwards, a conversation with him about what was going on for him. But I brought it back into the team. Yeah. Okay, cool. Anything else? Hi, Irina. Welcome. Good to see you.
I have a question.
Nope.
I was curious as to, oh, can you hear me?
Who am I speaking to?
This is Sandra.
Hi, Sandra.
I'm really enjoying this, and I'm working with potentially a team, and I'm realizing that they're feeling this sense of undervalued, feeling like they're undervalued.
Yeah.
Where would you say that is that part of agitation? Like, where does that fall into this space, and what do you potentially, like, where do we address that?
You mean they feel undervalued
as employees, as members of the team?
The team feels undervalued in the system of teams, the organization. Is that?
No, the individuals feel undervalued within the team from the leadership.
By the leadership.
Yes.
And what's your question? Because it happens.
So the question is does that fall, like, would that fall under agitation? Like, where does that sense of like that challenge fall? Is that a loaded question?
Tough one, because it could be at any of the three levels, right?
Okay.
So it could be a structural problem that people are not clear about their roles and the power they have in their roles, so that members also have power. You know, leadership is impossible if there are no members that follow you. So members actually have a lot of power, but if they don't understand their role definition, then it's a structural problem, Sandra. If it's a relational problem, then we're talking about like plus minus, we'd say plus minus relationships. Like there's something in the discount, we say people discount the value of other people in the team, then it's a relational problem. Yeah? You're not accounted for relationally. You're not involved in decision-making, you're not involved in communication, then it could be a relational problem. It could also be a psychodynamic problem, namely that some people in the team have a narrative that they're always undervalued, right? And then you have to do an intervention to change the story of that team. Does that make sense?
Helpful. Yes, yes, very helpful. Thank you.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
good luck.
On the surface, but yes.
Good luck with that. Yeah, but it's important to know that you have to look at all three levels and that you have to kind of check them off. Like start with the structural, then with the relational, then with the psychodynamic, so that you can pinpoint, because working at the psychodynamic level, the cultural level, really the narrative of a team is such a delicate kind of work. You need a longer time for that. Yeah. So I try to narrow it down, and whatever is left, we work either with, usually at the psychodynamic level, with critical events that haven't been processed. So there's a lot of grief in the team. Sometimes that happens. There's rucksacks that people bring their own narrative into the team, and they create their own nightmare by reforming the team to be their old story. And that takes time to work at that level. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, cool. Still with me? Yep. I'm gonna go to the third level and then share screen. And this is where sometimes it's funny, I have my colleagues who are psychotherapists or trained in psychodynamics, they love to work at this level. The problem is they often start to work at this level before they've done the other levels, which makes a mess. So usually if you start with this level, when the other levels aren't sorted, you'll create worse problems than there were before. So this is this little warning label. Please don't do that. I'm only going to talk about group imago here because I find this a fascinating part of the psychodynamic level. Again, at the psychodynamic level, there are 4 things I look at. One is imago, the other is transference, the other is narrative, which goes to and personality. And then really that tells me something about the slot, the authority slot someone has in the team. The authority slot, I'll give you the example. So sometimes people walk into a room and immediately everyone thinks they're the leader, whatever role they have. That's what personal authority is. So they get a transference of leadership or followership wherever they are. That's what we mean by personal authority in my world. Okay, so let's talk about this group imago. So I find this great. I was trained as well by the Tavistock Institute to work with group relations specifically for this. I love working at this level, and I love working at the narrative level as well. Often I come into a team and I've done the structural work, I've done the relational work, and then still there's stuff that isn't changing. And then I think, okay, there's something going on here. The difficulty with working at this level is that it's unconscious. So how do you work at the unconscious level? You know, it's unconscious for them, but it's also not visible really to you. The only thing you can see is the effects of the narrative. So you can see the effects of the team narrative in the way they transact, in the way they behave together. The way to work at this level is usually nonverbal. So any of you who want to work psychodynamics, I usually do it through drawing pictures. I bring whole stacks of magazines and ask them to make a mosaic of the team. How is the team? How do you want it to be? And then they show each other these pictures. I do a lot of constellation work. I'm a certified coach constellation person. So a lot of what I do is like stand up, show me, you know, how close or far are you from each other, and all without speaking. With the leader, because the leader, I do individual briefings and debriefings. I work with them specifically on their group imago of the team or group they're working with. You know, sometimes I've got leaders who bring in their little rucksack, they bring like stories of, you know, the group is not my friend kind of stories. And it shows in the way they do their leadership of the group. They don't trust. And if they don't trust, then nobody can trust in a team. Here, working with the group imago, I guess what I'm saying is it's nonverbal work. Usually I do it illustratively. I create experiences where people can actually see their group imago. I know the group imago has a tremendous, so the picture, the mental image of how a group should be has a tremendous influence on your behavior in a group. So if you are caught up in how a group should be, you're not accepting the group as is, it will influence your behavior. So to give you an anecdote, I was working, I was working with a team who I'd done the structural work and the relational work, and then the narrative of the team didn't seem to be shifting, and people kept on talking nostalgically about the team as it used to be. We used to be a family, we used to be small, we used to come to each other's houses, we used to know each other's children's names and dogs' names and whatever. And now we're a big team and we, What the thing is, the people, the oldies in the group, if I can call them that, they kept this group imago of a small team going. What happened at the relational level is that they had an in-group and an out-group, which caused a lot of agitation in the team. And what you could see at the structural level is that some people got a chance to be promoted, but the new people weren't getting chances to get promoted. Does that make sense? Do you understand how that works? Yeah. So one of the things I did with them is I did an exercise where I asked them to write a fairy tale about the team. And as you know, every fairy tale starts with, once upon a time, there was a team. And they got to write the whole history of a team. Every member of the team writes one sentence, a full sentence. And then, of course, they have a set number of minutes. This team wrote a story where the end of the story was that they would not be successful. It's a long story short, but that they would not be successful. So then I asked them to write, I did some exercises with them to create awareness about this in-group, out-group problem and what effect that had on the success of the team. 3 months later, I asked them to write the story again, and they had a completely different ending, which is, I feel really good about it because it was one of my hardest cases. I think, look, in a team, you can't change what happened in a team. You can't change the incidents they've had, the experiences they've had together, but you can change the story they tell about these incidents. And that makes a huge difference for how a team functions. Yeah. And I think that's our job. Our job at the psychodynamic level is really to help the team write a narrative which is more powerful than the narrative they have. Yeah. Easier said than done. Thank you, Bianca. I like the heart. Yeah. Any questions about this? Also welcome. Louise, you look ready to speak.
I just found it really interesting, but I am part of a team. So I guess it's made me really reflect on the team I work with, work in, my role, others' roles, and really thinking, much as there's lots of levels of issue and need, I think the structural bit for me, I go away thinking really much more about that. And
okay, so
yeah.
Tell me your gut, you had a gut instinct when we started this workshop about where you were stuck as a team. What was your gut instinct?
I think it's all about roles, who does what. Really simple, but really complicated, if that makes sense. So it's definitely structural.
Yeah. And then what I see in teams that have slowly evolved organically, if you were, they describe roles attached to a person. But one of the really important things probably in the development of your team is to revisit that, to think what is the purpose of our team, and then to think what roles are necessary for that. And then detached from the people to think, so, how are we going to describe these roles? that will bring you a step further in your development, possibly, maybe. I know just 1 minute of what you're saying, but that would be my guess. Yeah, my best guess at the moment. Okay. Anything else? We've got 2 minutes, folks. Everything I've always wanted to ask and never dared to. This is the moment to do it, really.
I have a question. I work in a charity, and we have a lot of volunteers, and some of the chairmen or women tend to change every sort of 3 years or so.
Yeah.
So have you got any advice on on working in that type of situation?
Well, what is the problem with that?
Probably the fact that there's so much lack of understanding with the different areas, I think. So maybe increasing the relationships and the dynamics, psychodynamics of what's going on, and having clearer structure. I suppose it does go across all 3 levels, doesn't it? So.
Yeah, one of the things I could ask is, do you actually, there must be some people who stay all the time.
There hasn't been.
Okay.
There have been some people that have been there for many years, but not necessarily doing the same role.
Okay. Well, we'll talk, catch up with me online, and we'll talk later.
Okay.
So I'm at the end of my time, and people are leaving obviously already. So was this okay for y'all? Yeah? Good?
Fantastic.
Good. I'm really happy. If you want to know more, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to stay in touch with colleagues. So
thank you so much, Sari, for this very interesting workshop. Loved it.
You're very
exceptionally
welcome.
well done.
Yes.
Oh,
indeed.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Round of applause for Sari.
Really great.
Thank you. Good luck, y'all.
Excellent, huh? Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, Zuber.
Oh, sorry, I'm going. Will the recording be shared? I thought this was a 90-minute session, and I joined a bit late, and I feel from the energy that I really feel like I missed out.
I'll put the recording on my website. So I think I sent you an email as well.
You did. So, and the website's in there. Okay, well, I don't want to make you late for anything.
That's okay. I'm not late. I enjoyed talking to my colleagues.
So Intact Academy, right?
Yeah, it's great to see you. Where are you based? England?
I'm in London. I'm a new coach myself. So yeah, and group is something that I really want to learn about.
Cool. Good for you.
I'll add you on LinkedIn, and yeah, I'll hopefully view you when it goes on your website.
Just stay in touch.
Likewise, if I can help with anything. Thanks so much.
Cool. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.